Hello, beautiful people. It's Bella, and I'm so excited to be back to share content about individual health and well-being, pleasure and sexuality, and what really makes us who we truly are. And I will also start creating more exclusive content on relationships, how we relate to one another, and how we can deconstruct everything that we've created and solidified in stone, from monogamy to marriage to how we have to parent and all the weights that are associated with that, to rediscovering a more light way of relating to one another that's more aligned with our true nature. And the underlying theme that I want to really highlight in this video, that's related to both individual search for well-being and health and the relational aspect of well-being, is really to simplify your search for who you are, how to live a healthy life. It's all one and the same. It's really looking at how was our body designed and projected to be. We have a certain blueprint. And if we understand that blueprint really well, and we align ourselves to it, then our body will itself guide itself to the things that makes us happy, the things that makes us healthy. It will guide us to find the right partners in life. It will guide us into situations that are beneficial for us. We just have to really relearn that language. And that's what I've compiled along years of personal search and professional search, from individual level health and populational level, public health policies, in what I call the sensefulness method. It's kind of a compilation of everything that I've learned that can help guide you back to yourself. And by guiding you back to yourself, I'm certain that your life will become so much more full of vitality and well-being. So it really is that simple. It's understanding how was our body projected to be. And if we want to understand that, we have to look at our ancestors and some of the more traditional societies. And so I'm just going to highlight the misalignment that we're living. So our body is projected to be a certain way, and we have been guiding it further and further away from this, natural way of being. And that unnaturalness has created all the disease, all the dis-ease, right? So when your body is not at ease with the way it's supposed to be, it goes into disease, physical, mental, and relational. Okay, so how did our ancestors live? Let's look at all the aspects very briefly. Food was actually their main activity throughout the day. So how do I obtain food? Where do I obtain it from? And kind of this constant search for it in attunement to the signals, right? Looking for colors, smells, having to be aware of your environment, really being physical and using all of your body muscles to obtain your food. And that, if you just think about that in and of itself can explain most of the health issues that we're having in our modern society. If we go back to obtaining our food with physical labor, so not necessarily in that way, but if we kind of mimic the amount of exercise we used to do associated to food obtaining, and if we try to go close to the types of food that we used to eat, so the natural, as unadulterated as possible, natural foods, and the way that they were supposed to be in natura, is the answer to all of our health problems. 8 out of 10 killers in the modern world, even according to CDC and the National Institute of Health, are related to chronic diseases, and they're completely related to our lifestyle. So if we change our lifestyle, we change our health and well-being. Then there's movement. So movement was not exercise in a gym or the 2 hours in front of a screen. It was all encompassing, never-ending aspect of who we were. It's this full range of motion. Our bodies were in constant motion, running away from the animals, climbing the trees, intercourse with one another, right? It was a never-ending process. And the other aspect of that, right, the rest was also very much kind of the really well respected. And when you were rested, that's what you really put your 100% of yourself into it. So during the day, we're always like either active or resting, right? So there's no in between. So that's the other aspect of our health and well-being, is movement. And then this one is actually, this is what connected me to wanting to talk about relationships, is the aspect of how did we relate to one another, right? What was our connection to both the opposite sex, so like kind of the search for the right partners, as well as at a community level, child rearing and maintaining our communities together. And I've done a lot of research on that, and it's fascinating how the shift from hunter-gatherer societies to agricultural societies, a couple of thousand years ago, completely transformed the way that our lifestyle, so the way that we live our life. And that not only changed our health and well-being, I believe, but it completely transformed the role of women and men, that interaction, the shift from numerous relationships to monogamy, and the institution of marriage was also associated to that. And many other aspects, such as, child rearing became kind of the family units that have to take care of their children and provide for them. If you look at women in the hunter-gatherer societies, they were very self-sufficient because they could go and, they were the ones who were doing the gathering, right? So they knew what fruits to get, what roots to get, and sure, they needed the men to go hunting every once in a while, but that wasn't essential. The essential part they could actually get. And so they were really self-sufficient, and they were also in constant movement. So most of the time they reared about 1 to 2 children. And that made them highly independent, and also no one really cared whose offspring it was. So sexuality wasn't controlled by anyone. And so the community revolved around, altruism and helping each other. And, the child rearing was kind of a shared amongst community members. And monogamy wasn't a thing at all, right? And then we go to agriculture. We start having to obtain food with heavy labor, which means that we are relying on men now, right? It has to be heavy labor. So women are now reliant on men to obtain food. We are stuck to a certain territory. We don't have to move around. So the women started like gaining weight and being more fertile, being able to bear around 8 to 10 children in their lifetime, which seems like a good thing, but in reality it made them even more dependent and stuck to this area, and dependent on men. And finally, the territorial aspect of the new type of living made it really important whose territory it was. So whether or not the children that you bore were yours or belonged to this man or that man became extremely important. So that's where the institution of marriage became extremely important to protect property rights. So the woman essentially becomes a property, and monogamy is instituted exactly around the time that agriculture comes into play. And coincidentally or not, the monotheistic religions are also come into play around that time, whereas before we were really polytheistic, and we had lots of different gods that were really reflected in the forces of nature. And a lot of these goddesses were actually women, right? So the most powerful goddesses were the mother nature, full of sexuality and full of health and vitality, and the giver of life. And we go from that to a single kind of a male figure god that's really reflective of the onset of patriarchy. So we have the change in lifestyle, change in the way that we think about, what's moral or not, what's right or wrong, the way that people relate to one another completely changes. So the ease with which we kind of follow our body's natural instinct completely diminishes. So we start following social rules as opposed to following natural rules. That's basically a little bit of a summary from a history perspective that I wanted to share with you, not to give you any ideas about how you want to live your life, but really for you to start thinking about, what is my body designed to do? How was I supposed to, how was I projected to live in alignment with nature in relation to one another? And make your own conclusions from that. Thanks for listening, and see you next week.